My name's Ewen Tweedie, and I head up the product and pricing capability in the life insurance practice at PwC. I'm joined today by Shelley, who comes from Montoux, who's one of our key partners in the pricing space. And today we're going to have a bit of a discussion around the startup and insurtech environment, which is increasingly being used to innovate in pricing functions. So Shelley, pricing teams have typically sourced capability through either a combination of DIY and internal investment or through technology procurement. Why should they be thinking about taking a new approach?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I'm kind of answering this from having worked in the life insurer. And when I look back at my time there, I really didn't spend enough time looking at the innovation landscape and how we could be solving problems by partnering with fintechs and insurtechs. So there's a couple of key points around why I think it should be part of the consideration set. It's certainly not saying it should be over some of those other things, but it should definitely be part of the evaluation or consideration set. And the reasons are, there's just this constant stream of new ideas, new technologies, new solutions. And so those ideas or innovations are increasingly solving problems that have previously been too hard or too expensive to solve. So if you're not looking out for these things, you're potentially living with a historic assumption or mindset that you actually could be doing something about. And the second point is linked to that. Often the commercials around these new propositions are fundamentally different to more traditional models, which means the ROI, if you're solving a particularly tricky business problem and the commercials are attractive, your ROI can be very, very positive and in a way that's quite different from more traditional models. And the last point is your competitors are doing this. So if you're not, and your competitors are able to solve problems that are in your too hard basket, they're going to get the leap. So, I think those are the three reasons why it should absolutely be part of your consideration set.
Yeah, I love that around challenging the current mindsets and not accepting the normal paradigm. I think that's really insightful. How could pricing teams more effectively leverage that startup landscape then to accelerate innovation within the pricing function?
Yeah, great question. And I think I see a couple of ways not to do it. So I do see an approach where sometimes people go, let me just go and look at the environment and see if there's a great idea out there. And that can lack a bit of focus. And then the other end of the spectrum, we have the traditional approach of RFIs and RFPs. And again, at the other end of the spectrum, that can be a bit restrictive and you might not be asking an open enough question to really uncover the possible. So what I think effective partnering looks like is being very specific about a business challenge you're trying to solve. Yeah. Not the solution itself, but the business challenge, including the value metrics or the objectives you're trying to achieve. So, what's the ROI you want? What's the outcome you want delivered? So get really specific about that business problem and then lay the challenge out for the insurtechs or the fintech providers. Lay it out and say, this is what we're asking you to do. Are you up for it? And I think you'll be quite surprised at how much people are up for and potentially willing to, put some skin in the game around that. The second piece around partnering, just lost my train of thought there, but coming back to it, is test and learn. So actually come up with a model where it's not around doing a business case for, millions of pounds. Actually boil it down to a minimum viable proposition, okay, around, well, what is it we need to believe in order to proceed, and get that down to a bite-sized or right-sized investment. Once that's proven, take it to the next level, and then the next level beyond that. So think about it and improving out the capability along the way. And invariably, the parties in the insurtech and fintech space are used to working in that way. So they'll be up for that way of working. And then lastly, but not least, be clear around what you want. If you want a certain ROI, if you want a certain feature, don't assume that because it's not in the brochure, you can't have it. So I just think get very explicit, back to the point around the business problem, get explicit about the business problem and then what you need, and then let them come back with the answer. If we don't, whereas I think sometimes traditional procurement processes almost hid away the need and wanted the vendors to almost interpret what that was, but just be very clear around what you need and then see what the providers can come back with. So those would be my 3 points there.
That's great. Yeah, so I really like that. So it's around lay out the problem and then test and learn, and not be afraid to try that. I think that's really good, and it's only through developing relationships, I think, that we can do that. So that's great.
Yeah. Look, my scenario is worked for a life insurer, wanted to develop a particular piece of capability that through a traditional provider was unaffordable. I went through an insurtech, did a test and learn, was able to achieve the same outcome for 20% of the investment of what an alternative method. So, and was able to do a test and learn, prove it, and then scale it from there. So that was my lesson, and I wish I'd done that a lot earlier.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Shelley. Shelley and I are working in this area, so if you've got any questions or would like to have a conversation to maybe help you lay out the problem, then please get in touch. Thanks.
Thanks.